Hey there, this is Spanky the Driving Dude with all things driving. Thanks for playing today. We're going to be coming at you with stats, stories, and tips to help you and your team become safe, successful, defensive drivers. I own Spanky's Driving Academy here in a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee, and I've been doing driver's ed for about 15 years. Fell into it just by chance, or maybe it was a God shot, and I love saving lives before we lose them. So I'm very passionate about raising up teen drivers to be safe, successful, responsible leaders and heroes out there on the road. We started Spanky's Driving Academy in the beginning of '08, I believe. So we're coming up on, next year will be 12 years. Crazy. And it's a driver's ed program for teenagers, high schoolers. And I also teach traffic school as well for people who get tickets. They come, we offer that class like 2 or 3 times a month for 4 hours, and then they come take the 4-hour class and get that ticket off their record as well. Why do I teach driving to teenagers? Well, like I said, I fell into it on a lark just by chance, and I realized that I was having a huge impact, no pun intended, on teen drivers, helping them to make good, wise decisions, not just in the car, but also in life. My background is youth ministry, so I was a youth pastor over the years, and then I worked for a mission organization as well called Mission Without Borders, and then became a hospice chaplain as well. Spent time on staff at a nursing home, so I was the guy that gets the call at 3 o'clock in the morning when someone passes away. So yes, I have seen people pass away at an older age. I've done funerals, done weddings and baptisms, and I can't stand doing funerals for young people, especially ones who die needlessly, in a car crash or something like that. So, I'm very passionate about saving lives before we lose them. So our teen driver's ed program, it's a blast. We do the classroom portion, and then after the classroom portion is finished, we get in the car and we do 6 hours of driving with a teenager, broken down into 3 driving lessons that are 2 hours each. So what's that look like? Well, let me get right at it here. A teen gets their permit, and they have to, in the state of Tennessee that is, they have to drive on a permit for 180 days. It might be like that in your state as well, but you're going to have to contact your local DMV, probably pick up a driving manual, or go to your state's website and read up on how the permit testing works. Here in Tennessee, it's like a 30-question multiple choice test on a computer most of the time that they take at the DMV. And if they get like 80%, they pass. And then they walk over there and they take their picture and get their permit. And then they start driving with mom and dad. And they hold a permit for 180 days. Once they hit that 180-day mark, and once they hit 16, they could take their license test, which is, in the state of Tennessee, it's pretty much a 10-minute road test. Unfortunately, they take them up to the corner and bring them around, bring them right back. And if they don't do anything boneheaded, they take their picture for their license, and then they hand them a license right then and there. The state of Tennessee does require a parent give their teenager 50 hours of driving. Unfortunately, a lot of parents don't give their teens 50 hours of driving. And then when they go to test for their license, they just sign this document swearing that they did give them 50 hours of driving. Unfortunately, in most of the cases, they don't. And then they're scratching their head 15 minutes later when the examiner comes back and says, your teen failed the driving test. It's wonder, because any teen who has 50 hours of driving should probably be racking up well over 1,200 miles in those 50 hours. So I'm going to add that up on my little phone here. 1,200 miles divided by 50 hours. That's only driving 24 miles per hour. So if they're stuck at stop signs, red lights, traffic and stuff, that should add up to 24 miles. Now, my own daughter, actually, she had 1,650 miles, and we got her to 52 hours before she tested for her license. That ended up being about 31 miles per hour that we drove with her. In my humble opinion, the miles is more important than the hours. If you rack up that many miles, well, then the hours will follow. So we racked up 1,650, and sure enough, it ended up being 52 hours. So you could do the math there. The The license test through Spanky's Driving Academy, which we do offer that license test free of charge. Ours is a little bit more difficult. We require lane changes. We require going through merging, yielding, left and right hand turns, and our test takes a little bit longer than the state's test at the DMV. I think because they have so many teens testing that they have to get them, down the road and back and stay on schedule, because you make an appointment at the DMV for the test. So, they're trying to stay on pace. Let's say they have 4 appointments per hour. Well, they have to get them in the car, go over the instrument panel, do the 10-minute test, come back, do their score, and send them on their way before they get the next teen. So I think they're in more of a hurry, so that's probably why it's an easier test. I have no idea. But anyways, you can, in the state of Tennessee, you can go to tn.gov and you'll find all the driver services icon, and you can click on that. It'll show you all about the permit test, the license test, and you can even download the manual on there. And in the manual, they even have a spreadsheet to where you could log your teens driving. And you could print that spreadsheet out, I believe, and you can multiply it, copy it 4 or 5 times. And that way you could rack up your teens driving miles and driving hours as well. Let me go over something called defensive driving. Do you guys know what defensive driving is? Well, basically, defensive driving is just looking out for all the bozos out there on the road. So if you've ever had to slow down, speed up a little bit without breaking the speed limit, or changing lanes to avoid somebody that might run a red light, a stop sign, or pulling out of a driveway abruptly, then that means you were defensive driving. You were driving defensively. I had one person in our traffic school says, "Hey, Spanky." I said, "Yes, Miss Marion. Every time I look out for those bozos out on the road, am I defensive driving?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. You were driving defensively." That's really what it is. If you have to cover your brake because you're worried about somebody running a red light, that's driving defensively. So it's basically this. It's scanning. It's identifying what could happen. It's predicting. Let me back that up. It's scanning, identify what you see out there, predicting what could happen, deciding what you need to do about it, and executing on your decision. So it's scan, identify, predict, decide, and execute. And at our program at Spanky's Driving Academy, we have all the teenagers memorize that. So when I go to pick them up for their first driving lesson, I'm going to say, "Hey, what is Spanky's method of driving?" And they're going to say, scan, identify, predict, decide, and execute. And I'll say, yes. Then I'll ask them, what's the word SMOG stand for? And it's an acronym, SMOG, and it stands for signal, mirror, over the shoulder, go. And we teach them that in our class as well, so that whenever we have them merge or changing lanes to the left or right, I'm going to say, "Hey, Jessica, smog to your left for me." And she'll go left blinker, look in her left mirror, look over her left shoulder to eliminate her blind spot, and then she'll go and she'll change lanes. Or I'll say, "Hey, Nathan, smog to your right." And it will be signal, mirror, over your right shoulder, and then go. And that way, if I get them to memorize that progression, whenever mom or dad says, "Hey, let's change lanes to the left or right," they're going to do that smog in their mind, and then they'll do that progression as well physically. So it's smog, SMOG, signal, mirror, over the shoulder, go. Spanky's defensive method of driving, or Spanky's method of driving, is scan, identify, predict, decide, execute. Scan the road left or right, identify what you see, predict what could happen, decide what you need to do about it, and then execute on your decision. There's something else that we also teach our teenagers before they get in the car with us. It's what YIELD stands for. YIELD stands for slow down, stop if necessary, and give the right of way. And we actually had 2 teenagers about 3 or 4 weeks apart. They failed their driving test with us because they didn't stop when it was necessary. They came up to the yield, they looked over their left shoulder, but they didn't look across the intersection at cross traffic. And some of those people had a green arrow, which is also nicknamed protected light. So if you have a green arrow, it is called a protected light, and that might be on the permit test for teenagers in the state of Tennessee. So when you have a protected light, that's a green arrow. So you can make a left-hand turn and everybody has to yield for you. So I got up to this yield with this girl, this sweet teenager. She got up to the yield to go right. She looked over her left shoulder for on traffic coming, but they had a red, so they couldn't go. But she failed to look across the intersection, and they had a green arrow, so they were coming. Well, she just looked to her left, but she didn't look across. And in her estimation, she's like, nobody's coming. So she went to go, but I had to hit my extra brake pedal because obviously I'm at driving school. I have an extra brake pedal. So I had to hit that brake pedal before she hit that car, that was coming, from across the intersection. And had I not hit my extra brake pedal, she definitely would have cut him off. He would have hit us, or she would have hit him. And unfortunately, it was an automatic fail. And she had to hop back online, book a driving test date at the DMV, and a few weeks later, retest at the DMV. A few weeks later, I had a teen guy in the car with me. He did the same exact thing at that intersection. And we go over it on all of our driving lessons as well. So they should know it. But sometimes on the driving test with us, they tighten up on their driving test, even though we have a relationship and they've been in the classroom with us and done all their driving lessons. Sometimes teens just tighten up and they just forget, and it's unfortunate. So anyways, so yield means slow down, stop if necessary, and give the right of way, and then you may proceed. What else can I tell you? Oh, you know what? In our classroom program, we go over speeding, road rage, and aggressive driving. We go over what signs are, why they're that shape, why they're that color. We go over why the lines on the road are solid yellow, solid white, broken white. Sometimes there's a broken yellow with a solid yellow, and we go over that in our classroom as well. We also we talk about the dangers of impaired driving, like drunk driving, drugs, marijuana, prescription drugs and driving, even what it's like driving on NyQuil, which you shouldn't be doing, driving on laughing gas when you come home from the dentist, get somebody to drive you home, Novocaine. Also, we talk about Oxy and Hydro, all these prescription drugs, mixing those together with alcohol, and drowsy driving as well. Gosh, we talk about intersections, how to merge onto an interstate. Parallel parking as well. We go over that in our class. I even teach parallel parking on our driving lessons. So we go through everything. It's a great program here at Spanky's Driving Academy. I hope you guys will tune in. All things driving. I'm going to have some stats for you guys. I'm going to have some stories for you, especially when we get to the distracted driving portion, because that's an epidemic in our country. Lots to do here. We hope we could save lives before we lose them. I really appreciate you guys tuning into this first episode. I'm not the most eloquent guy, but I'm just going to be real, raw, personal as well with my own life and my history of driving and racking up some tickets in my earlier years and having to go to traffic school. I appreciate your time today. Tune in. I'm Spanky the Driving Dude with All Things Driving, and we are out. Thanks again. Bye-bye.